the circle of joy begun by the Creator spirals upward forever. Never forget that you now have and always have had everything you need for happiness. Let me give you a little bit of background. I wrote this a few years ago when I was deep in research and writing for my book on creation, which included providence. And also, I was teaching Augustine's Confessions, especially in Book 10, where he connects the search for God to the search for what he calls the happy life. And by the happy life, he doesn't mean, of course, just momentary excitement. He means a deep, abiding confidence and peace and serenity by resting in God. So he connects the two searches. Human beings always want to be happy, but they don't always connect it with wanting to be connected to God. And Augustine in Book 10 and earlier in Book 9 also connects those two searches. And that connection has been important for me in trying to teach young people today, because they certainly want to be happy, but they're not very clear where this happiness is going to come from. And they often look in all the wrong places. So I wrote this little essay about 5 years ago in response to those two things, and I'll share it with you now. You now have and always have had everything you need for happiness. Christian faith is belief that God is, was, and always will be alive, and that God is, was, and always will be the source of life for all living things. Faith is conviction that God is the giver of every good thing we can hope to have. Faith clings to God as the ever-present, always attentive sustainer of our lives, as the unchanging beginning of temporal movement, as the end toward which all things strive. Faith understands God as the eternal unity that embraces all creation and every moment, every feeling and thought, every act, and all our sufferings into a meaningful whole. Faith looks to God as that transcendent still point that imparts peace to our fragmented and chaotic lives. Christian faith does not view God as an anonymous, purely transcendent good. It sees the character and plan of this transcendent good in the face of Jesus Christ. In Jesus Christ, the eternal unity has united creation to himself in the most intimate way possible. The human being, Jesus of Nazareth, has been so united to God that human nature participates in divine qualities without ceasing to be human. In him, creation has reached its glorious fulfillment, and God has achieved his eternal purpose. In faith, Christians look to Jesus Christ as the trustworthy basis of hope for that glorious fulfillment. Augustine said truly, "The happy life is joy based on truth." But everyone knows the difference between believing a statement and experiencing the reality that makes the statement true. Only in living by faith may we experience the truth on which joy is based. When all other supports have failed, all other helpers have fled, and the last human hope has faded into darkness, we find that God is there. God is there, has been there, and will always be there. When God is all you've got, you realize that God is all you've ever had. But how can we keep this realization alive? We are creatures of habit, and most of our habits pull us into the mesmerizing flow of ordinary life. The sights and sounds, worries and responsibilities, and desires and ambitions of life distract us from our true joy. Because we're habit-forming, distractible beings, our strategy for maintaining awareness must counteract these tendencies. We need to form habits and practices that remind us that we now have and always have had everything we need for happiness. I would like to suggest some ways we can keep vividly aware that God is all we really need. These are suggestions only, designed to provoke thought, and you may find other ways. The first is, since you will not always be consciously focused on God, surround yourself with reminders, with symbols and words. You might place the words I have been repeating in this essay. You now have and always have had everything you need for happiness, somewhere where you're sure to see them every day. Make connections between everyday activities and the memory of God. Gregory of Nazianzus from the 4th century said, "It is more important that we should remember God than that we should breathe. Indeed, if one may say so, we should do nothing besides." What if every time we noticed our breathing, we remembered that God alone breathes into us the breath of life? Second, make the unbreakable habit of meeting frequently with fellow believers to remind each other of who we are and on whom we depend and in whom we find our joy. Remember in the Lord's Supper the body and blood of the Lord. Remember your baptism. Third, in your solitude, practice stripping away every finite good and temporal joy. Be alone and still, and let it wash over you that you exist and that you are alive through no effort of your own. We're so busy striving to get ahead, make a living, make the grade, gain approval, that we become anxious and unhappy. We begin mistakenly to think that our existence, meaning, and value depend on us. Despairing of our strength to carry such a burden, we add unhappiness to our load, making it even heavier. Stop. Ask yourself, what if I were dying alone in a ditch, in a thunderstorm? In what could I find comfort, hope, and joy? In God alone. Even there, you would have what you have always had. If we know this and keep constantly aware of it, we can return to ordinary life with new freedom and joy. We can enjoy and use the good things of this beautiful world as they were meant to be enjoyed and used. We can take joy in them as divine gifts that evoke gratitude for the goodness of God. If we know that God alone is our joy, we will be freed to use the good things of creation properly. That is, to sustain our lives, to share with others the bounty of creation, so that they too may rejoice in God. The circle of joy begun by the Creator spirals upward forever. Never forget that you now have and always have had everything you need for happiness.